we'll move on to any disclosure of pecuniary interest on the agenda as presented to you. None? Okay, we'll have that duly noted. No delegations and no communications. So we do have a report, management, non-union administrative support staff, and council economic salary adjustment for 2021. Okay. Just looking for a mover here, or do you, somebody going to talk to that?
If you like, I could briefly explain the report to council, your worship.
Okay. Yeah, just some of the highlights.
Yeah, just the highlights. So this is the annual report that we bring to council in keeping with our compensation and salary administration policy number 67. This report also recognizes a small housekeeping amendment to the policy as it relates to the recommendations that came out of the salary review in 2015. And those essentially are based on how the factors would be determined in reviewing the cost of living adjustment every year for this group of employees. In addition, the small housekeeping also recognizes the new structure of the salary grid being 5 steps rather than the previous 13 steps. So we've also outlined here within this report the various factors that are to be considered when looking at an economic adjustment for this group. Given that the economic adjustment comparators and information is not fulsome at this time, we're recommending that simply the formal housekeeping amendment be approved for the policy, and that we bring back a report at a later date when those comparators are fully known with regards to any economic adjustment for this group of employees.
Okay, thank you, Laura. And there is a motion that the report from that's 2020-37, entitled Management, Non-Union Administrative Support Staff, Council Economic Adjustment for 2021 be received. That the Compensation Salary Administration Policy number 67, as amended in the appendix to report 2020-37 be approved. And further, that the annual economic adjustment for 2021 for both the management, non-union administrative support staff salary schedule, salary grid, in accordance with the Compensation Salary Administration Policy number 67, and members of council in accordance with the bylaw number 2006-84 be deferred pending additional information on the factors to be considered for the economic adjustment as outlined in this report. Whew, that was a mouthful. All right, council's pleasure. Move. Councilor Houston, Councilor Tonio. Support. Any further questions or comments? Yes, go ahead, Councilor Houston.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just through you, I know it makes reference to the study going on, but do we have an idea, like Q2, Q3, when that's due to be completed?
Go ahead, Mark.
Thank you, through your worship, to council. We're looking at it being completed end of Q2 and then reported out beginning of Q3. That's the goal.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Further questions or comments? Hearing none, all in favor? Opposed, if any? That is carried. All right, we'll move on to the item 2 as well, is the Joint Health and Safety Advisory Committee terms of reference. Pretty straightforward, that one, but go ahead.
So just briefly on this particular report, this is the terms of reference for our Joint Health and Safety Advisory Committee. It is a committee that is comprised of both administrative and union staff members. So the committee went through and made some revisions to the terms of reference, which they thought would provide clear path for members and stating what needs to be done, and the terms of reference on keeping them on track and clarifying meeting procedures, and helping new members integrate into the way the Health and Safety Committee functions. So these changes have been made in consultation with the Health and Safety Committee as well as the senior management team. And we are looking for council's acceptance of these changes to the terms of reference and to receipt of this report.
Okay, thank you, Laura. And so we're actually looking at to receive the 2020-42 Joint Health Safety Advisory Committee terms of reference, and that the Joint Health and Safety Advisory Committee terms of reference be appended to report 2020-42 be approved. Deputy Mayor Bichetti and Councilor Dowie, any questions or comments? I'm hearing none. All in favor? Opposed, if any? That carries. The third item is the 2020-20 commemorative tree program policy. And I think maybe, I don't know if Paul wants to speak to that. There you go, Paul.
Yes, if I may, Mayor, members of council, this policy is not unlike the commemorative bench policy that we put in place a year ago. We tried to untangle some of the past concerns with the tree program and put them into a policy that would allow an individual in the community or business to purchase a memorial tree, plant it, have a plaque, a standard plaque that would be at the base of the tree if they so wished. This also goes with our overall goal of increasing the tree canopy in the town. So by moving forward with this program, it gives, again, residents the opportunity and businesses to invest. It gives us the opportunity to increase the tree canopy in our community and make us a healthier and viable community as we go forward. So I'm open to any questions on this policy if there is any.
Paul, what is if somebody wanted to purchase a tree and the plaque and so forth, what would be the contribution or the cost?
So the policy currently right now, I believe it's $500 for the tree, and I think it's $350 for the plaque if they want the plaque. And it's put in a stone base, so it's not easily removed, stolen. And those fees will be upgraded every year in our fees and charges policy annually. If there's an increase in trees or in the purchase of the actual memorial marker, I'll call it a memorial marker, we'll adjust prices at that time. But those are the prices going into this year.
Okay, so all in, it's $850.
If they want to, yes, have the. Some people just like to have the tree and want to be anonymous, but if they want everything, yes, it's the $850.
Okay. Thank you. Any further questions or comments? Go ahead, Councillor Altenhoff.
Thank you, Worship. And through you, I want to first acknowledge administration for kind of bringing this policy forth. I think certainly will help our residents. I just wanted to ask, though, there's section 3.12, 3.21, and 3.31, where certainly there's a best efforts made by administration, either with regards to the tree species, I think the positioning of the plaque, as well as kind of the installation. Excuse me. Yeah, 3.12, 3.21, and then I'm sorry, 3.31, the site location. Just curious if we could put maybe a sentence in there, because it's a bit of discussions between obviously administration and the contributor as to regards to the site location and the other aspects. I know, and the report indicates that best attempts will be made to you know, kind of fall in line with the contributors' request. But I guess my only point is if we could put a sentence in there just to indicate that, you know, if there's a significant discrepancy between what the contributor wanted and what the actual potential end result is, if it's significantly different, just a little bit of dialogue occur with administration to the resident, just so that you know, everything's clear and rationales are provided as to why you know, perhaps the contributor's specific reason or rationale couldn't be followed. So I asked that to administration, if Mr. Anthony kind of, you know, is it worthy to just put in a few sentences on that at these points, just to assist with any discrepancies which may result? Thank you.
So through the mayor again to Councillor Altonoff, this policy is designed using a lot of other policies that are in similar fashion in other municipalities. We want to ensure that, first of all, that the trees, we know right now what problem we are within trees. If we give people the opportunity to go beyond those trees, the issues we're facing today with poplars and other trees that people want down, you know, 100 years after they were actually planted. So we want to specifically let them have a choice, and residents have been very happy with that. The customized plaque, again, it's something that we want to standardize. It gives everybody the same opportunity. We don't want a situation where somebody's coming in with a 3-foot by, you know, plaque or some kind of acknowledgement, and the next person comes in and puts something in small and it's stolen. We want to devise something that would look neat. It's easy to maintain around the tree for our staff. It sits in the wood chips around the tree. And so I think it needs to be standardized. And then the third, the site selection. I think we basically have said, Councillor Altonoff, what you'd like, but at the end of the day, it's going to be up to the department to finalize that tree location. I mean, all efforts will be to dialogue with it. I don't think we need to put that into the policy. We certainly will work with them, and if we can, that's great. But once again, you know, you could have a resident that wants it closer to the road, and we're in a situation right now with an individual like that. And we have to say no. You know, it can be in that same area, but it has to come back. So we really have to have the final say to ensure that things are going to happen. So you know that we will work with the residents. I don't think we have to identify it in the actual policy, but at the end of the day, it will be up to the town to make that final decision. And it's going to be in the area, you know, of most where they're looking at.
Councillor Altonoff.
Yeah, thank you. And through you, Mr. Mayor, yeah, thank you, Mr. Anthony. And I recognize that I think best efforts are made. I mean, I'm fine with what's presented, and I appreciate you making the statement that you did. And I certainly know that your efforts in the past and the efforts of our staff have always been to try to work with the resident. Again, I just propose this as something that, you know, may alleviate issues in the future. And you know, the thoughts that, you know, just noting that I felt maybe appropriate. If you're okay with that, Mr. Anthony, as it is, I'm fine with it. I'll agree with that. But I just wanted to present that as potentially an option. If you're okay, I'm fine with it. Thank you.
Okay, anything further, members of council? Okay, then the motion that the tree replacement donation and memorial policy number 33-09 be rescinded, and that the commemorative tree program policy number 106 as attached to Parks and Recreation Services report number PRS-2020-20 be approved. Councillor Altonoff and Councillor Jobin. All in favor? Opposed, if any, that's carried. So in one hand, we're planting trees, and the other one, we remove them. Okay, Public Works, Environmental Services, yeah, 2020 tree maintenance and removal policy. Okay, Mr. Bartnick, so you're going to be the Grinch because I guess we're getting rid of the trees and.
Well, we're going to try and protect them.
Good man.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you, Your Worship, and good evening, members of council. So the report before you has essentially 3 recommendations for the report to be received. for the for the existing tree trimming policy 40-2002 to be rescinded, and that the tree maintenance and removal policy number 108 be adopted. I'd like to just spend a few moments here speaking to the report and the policy itself that we're bringing forward. So in May of 2017, Bill 68 received royal assent, which was an amendment to the Municipal Act, and specifically Section 270 required all municipalities to adopt and maintain policies with respect to the protection and enhancement of the tree canopy and natural vegetation in the municipality. So this policy, this proposed policy, will support the protection of the town's trees, tree cover and canopy. The existing policy from 2002 appears to satisfy a portion of Bill 68, but it is proposed that the policy needed to be further enhanced and included additional information to consistently protect and manage the town's tree cover throughout the town. The proposed policy will protect and enhance the tree cover and include standards for procedures for consistently managing, planting, pruning, and removal of trees located on town property. A key addition to the policy is that requests to remove a healthy tree from town property for nuisance reasons, whether it's leaves or sticks, nuts or shade, will not be considered. Tree management will be administered by the Director of Public Works and Environmental Services and the Director of Parks and Recreational Services in consultation with an arborist. The policy speaks to notification of adjacent property owners for when a tree on town property has been identified to be removed by an arborist. The policy also speaks to replacement of trees that have had to be removed to ensure that the tree inventory is not diminished. A separate policy will be presented to council in 2021 with respect to the enhancement of the town's tree canopy and inventory. And lastly, the town currently budgets $30,000 for new tree plantings every year and $60,000 for tree trimming and removals. If there's any questions, I'd be happy to answer them. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Phil. Any questions? Yes, Andrew, Councillor Dowie and Councillor Tonio to follow, and Deputy Mayor Bichetti. Go ahead, Councillor Dowie.
Thank you, Your Worship, and thank you, Phil, and to everyone in administration who contributed to the report. I think it certainly polishes it up and gives some clear goals for protecting tree cover. And I know every neighborhood would love to have that canopy. And in a couple of decades, we should see quite a bit more within our municipality to the foresight of years past. So I just have one question I was hoping for to get some further detail on, and that's in terms of the emergency removal of a healthy tree. I know frequently we get requests to remove messy trees or trees where the branches do fall and damage private property. And I guess I just wanted to confirm whether the removal or the emergency removal is going to reside entirely with these towns' arborists, or if there is some other way of determining whether that the conditions are satisfied.
Thank you, Councillor Dowie. Before I just wanted to apologize. Before I answer the question, I wanted to give a big thank you to Paul Anthony, Director of Parks and Rec, as well, because he did most of the heavy lifting with the policy, and I wanted to extend my thank you to him as well and give him some recognition. With respect to the emergency situation, it would be in coordination with the arborist on whether or not the tree must be removed. I know there's a situation recently within the last year where there was what appeared to be a healthy tree where a portion of it came down in a windstorm and kind of revealed to us that the insides had been rotting out, and the tree had to be removed due to safety reasons. So it's those types of situations, I think, where the emergency removal in coordination with the arborist would kind of be enacted there.
Go ahead, supplementary, Councilor Dowie.
Thank you, Worship. So just for my own clarity, thank you for that, Phil. That does really give a good description of when it would be considered. So in the event that maybe this is too much of a hypothetical, but if the neighbors did wish to all pool together and say we really want this nuisance tree gone, it's a flat no under this policy, and it would have to be escalated back to town council for any further decision making on that point.
Through you, Your Worship, yes, I would suspect that would be the case as with most policies. If the issue does get raised in front of council, there is that opportunity to deviate. However, we try to write these policies with good intentions and with varying outcomes, but there is obviously that opportunity for council.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councilor Dowie. Councilor Tonio.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor. Just want to say thank you for the report. Great report. Anything that helps our environment, I think, is very important. Our municipality obviously has a carbon footprint, and we do take from the world, and this is an opportunity for us. What I want to emphasize on this is I want to make sure that we keep our tree inventory large, very large, like not just a few. I know we have like $30,000 worth of trees, I believe, in a program to plant them, but replacing one tree that's 50 years old with a tree that's 5 years old is have the same carbon footprint. So we should consider, if we're taking down a large tree, we should probably plant 5 or 6, not in that same location, maybe in our parks or otherwhere, just to keep our municipal footprint, carbon footprint cleaner than it is. And that's my only suggestion, is make sure we keep that tree inventory up and we plant more trees that we take away. Thank you.
Deputy Mayor Joe Becchetti.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Phil. Just a couple of questions on the tree removal. I know, like Councilor Dowie alluded, that if there's a tree that's causing a nuisance, those are a type of calls. I think I received about 3 or 4 over the last few years regarding taking trees down. The way the report's written right now, it doesn't have the lens of the resident that lives there. And I know, we want to protect and conserve trees. However, if I live at a property and this tree's doing, I don't know, berries or whatever species, and it's doing a mess on the driveway, there should be an opportunity where there's some kind of, if we take this down at the owner's cost and he has to replant trees on his property to have the proper species to get rid of that nuisance. There's no mention of that in this report, and it's really tight where this resident now has to live with this messy tree for years and years and years. And I'm not sure if we can look at looking at it through the lens of the resident and say, look, we will be able to take it down at your cost. You need to replant this type of tree or 2 types of trees on your property to replace that. I don't know if that's something that would open up a can of worms, but it allows that resident, and again, the manager or whoever does that decision making would have to use a subjection or look at this subjectively and say, yes, this is a nuisance. It goes on to damaging personal property, whether it be infrastructure, sewers, and they've got evidence from a professional that is providing you notation or documentation. I want the town to be able to collaborate with that owner. And again, if the answer is no and it has to come to council, so be it. I just don't want, this coming to council for these one-offs throughout the year where, there could be some collaboration at the administrative level in advance of that.
I would, I would suggest that that's exactly what would happen. A good example, if you look at in the inventory of poplar trees across the municipality, you deal with one like that, and I know I've gotten 3 or 4 calls too, and the ones on L'Esperance, the 8 big poplars that were planted by John Rushlow a few years back. Those are healthy trees. They've been trimmed and so forth. So if you were to then look at the poplar trees, then you'd have to look at mulberry trees. You would have to look at a whole host of trees where berries, as you stated, where birds eat them and their droppings and so forth. So I'd be very, very hesitant in doing that. The other thing, just to Councilor Tonio's point, a tree up to 80 to 100 years old sequesters a heck of a lot of carbon. And if you were to cut that tree down, you planted with, even if you planted 5 small trees, it would take 25 years, 30 years of growth for those trees to be able to sequester the amount of carbon that one tree would hold. So I think, we have to be very, very careful. And I hate using the terminology nuisance because it could be a dirty tree and so forth. But the fact is that they are very important and for us to cut major trees because somebody doesn't like the fluff in May that comes off cottonwoods or poplars or mulberries because of the berries and so forth. I think you'd really open up a lot of issues with a lot of folks, because if you do it to one, you'd have to go across the municipalities and so forth. I think we should monitor trees if they're diseased or dying or dead trees and so forth. And there's no question there's liability issues. They need to be removed. But even at that, they should be replaced. And so that would be my thing is that you got to make a policy that's pretty stringent, but and if you look at a lot of other communities, London and many others, they have some pretty stringent tree policies and that. Councillor, I'll go back to Deputy Mayor Bichetti, and then I'll go back to Councillor Altenhoff. I believe Mr. Anthony had some questions as well. Go ahead, Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Mayor. And that is exactly what may transpire. In terms of another example, how this would fit this policy, I sent Mr. Fur some pictures where our building code states that you can't have trees that impede sightlines on corner lots. And let's say it's on municipal property and it's a healthy tree. How would that be taken care of in terms of this policy? Because this policy will direct the manager on a decision. So, if you look at, there's one picture, it shows the hydro pole. These trees are on municipal road allowance and they're over 25, 30 feet. And if you look down, there is a hydro pole there. It is impeding the cars that are coming out. The driveway of this owner, again, dangerous popping out. You see where the drain is. How would this example fit the policy if there's a complaint lodged, which I believe it has at the town regarding the safety and the sightlines and the 4-foot clearance of trees?
Well,
So,
a big problem.
Question for administration.
Yeah, that's why, Deputy Mayor, it's critical for us to have a strong policy to really monitor where trees are planted. That should have never been planted, 30 years ago, whatever, and into the municipal right of way. And we have moved trees and because of sightline issues and so forth. And that's why I think a very strong policy where you plant them and what you plant, I think are very critical so that it doesn't come to bite us 25 or 30 years down the road.
Yeah, so again, as a follow-up, then administration will have to reconcile
Yeah.
the building code and the complaint that's lodged with this tree policy, and, you know, we have to be careful of saying, well, no, that's okay, it's a healthy tree, and let it go. But
Safety
others-
trumps. Safety
Yeah.
trumps. I mean, there's no question, you know, you know, I mean, you can't jeopardize safety, but I think, anyway, I'll leave it at that, but I think, I'll ask, Mr. Anthony, had his hand up, and then I'll go to, Councillor Altenhoff, and then, Mr. Bartnick.
If I may, I'll respond to the deputy mayor's first request, and then I'll let Mr. Bartnick respond to the emergency one. If we recall that years ago when this policy was asked for, and it's taken some time to develop because we did want to make sure that we got it right. The problem is if we don't have a strict policy and we say yes to one individual who has a poplar tree and has a pool, and all of a sudden the stuff's coming down, and we take that tree down, the door's open. And I think that's why we wanted this policy. The goal from the province and also from the town is to protect and enhance our tree canopy, not to remove. And it's understood that, yes, there's nuisance to some of the individuals through poplar trees, through maple keys, et cetera. And we have to put something in place that really takes that decision out of all of our hands and maintains that tree. Because once again, if we start to say yes to one individual, where do we stop? If we make that one move, because everybody's got their own reasoning for wanting a tree down, and yes, they want to plant a new one. But I think, as the mayor's alluded to earlier, the poplars, for example, the amount of carbon they take out, a new tree takes years to be able to do what that tree does right now. So we have to try to protect that for forest, and that's what we're trying to do. The commemorative tree policy, this policy, and then a tree enhancement policy to enhance the canopy will be coming later on, all with the goals to ensure that the tree canopy does get increased and maintained for the future. And I'll let Mr. Bartnock respond to the other comment regarding the emergency or the safety.
Thank you, through you, Your Worship. Just in regards to the safety and the sight lines, when we do receive complaints or issues are raised with respect to safety and sight lines, we do have our manager of roads go out and inspect the area and to determine if the sight lines are in accordance with the Ontario traffic manuals. If they are not, then the object, whether it's a bush or a tree, is then either trimmed or removed for safety reasons. And I believe there's also some dialogue that does take place with the adjacent property owner prior to those works taking place.
Mr. Councillor Altenhoff.
Thank you, Worship, and through you, I guess, first off, again, I'd like to extend my appreciation and thanks to administration. I recognize this is a challenging topic, not an easy thing to perhaps set all possibilities within a number of page policy. But as I read through it, I kind of identified it as more of a status quo of, I think, of what we currently do. I think that generally there's quite good attention on ensuring the safety of trees, monitoring them. Certainly when our residents call in, I think there's attention to that. But I want to note that the original impetus for this policy review was really for kind of a cost sharing of tree maintenance. And when I read through this, there's really little or no provisions stated where residents wishing to cost share in tree maintenance, which is really the scope of the original request for the review, it doesn't exist. Additionally, the basis for which the municipality would consider cost sharing is really not noted as well. So it's either, I kind of get the impression that it's either just not wishing to be considered at all or was completely omitted perhaps by mistake. And I think we should attend to this because cost sharing can benefit the town financially. I know we are making some investments of $60K per year for removal, but If there's appropriate reason and rationale, which is supported by the arborist, and the residents are wishing to contribute to it as well, that can benefit us. And as well, one other point on tree pruning, there's really no reference or documentation within the proposed policy associated with pruning trees, which are planted on a town property and encroach on private property. And I think, as a result of these 3 points, I think a little bit of a revision is necessary, reconsideration is necessary. I know it's a daunting task here, but I think, and I'm hoping that with a little bit of effort, we can come to something that really hits on cost sharing, because this policy does not do that at all, as well as the concept of tree pruning on species which certainly are planted on town property but encroach on private property. Thank you.
Go ahead, Mark.
Actually, I'm going to call on Phil, because if memory serves correctly, the policy does provide for residents to be able to trim branches that do encroach onto their property from the public property. So there is a provision in the policy, I believe. But Phil, if you could please enlighten us.
Yes, thank you, Mark. You are correct. I don't know if I have it on my fingertips here, but the intent was that there could be tree trimming by the private property owner, provided that it does not do damage or do damage to the tree to the extent where the tree would then die because of it. There is a section of pruning within the policy. It does specify that it's all in accordance with the recommendations from the arborist themselves. I know the previous policy from 2002 and this one, there's slight differences and changes. I think the largest one is that we added a lot of definition with respect to the arborist and whether it's an in-house arborist or one that's contracted by the town. I know over the years we've had the luxury of having an arborist on staff. However, I don't think he's going to be around forever. So we wanted to ensure that if the next manager of horticulture is not an arborist, that we do have a mechanism to contract that out on behalf of the town.
If I could actually just one more point, Mr. Mayor, on the other matter.
Go ahead.
And perhaps even touching on previous discussion here. So I think that the approach that was taken on this is very much from a climate change and science-based approach. So we have tried to remove subjectivity from the policy and ensure that it is science-based. So you'll see, to Phil's point, that there's a heavy reliance on the advice of a professional arborist, so that we are only removing and trimming trees as per a professional's guidance and kind of minimize the subjectivity associated with it in order to protect the tree canopy. And this is done really in keeping with, obviously our state of things with respect to climate change and environmental degradation that seems to be marching along, and in keeping with Council's declaration of climate change emergency just a year ago. Did keep those kind of top of mind as the policy was under development, and also it does. Councillor Altenhoff is quite correct. It does say that the town is responsible for that tree canopy up to and including a cost associated with taking care of it. So just to provide a bit of a context for Council's information as to what was guiding our development of this policy. Thank you.
Yeah, and I just want to add two things to that. I mean, obviously, the altering of the canopy also could be detrimental to the tree, especially in wind conditions. That's been a proven fact. The other, probably there's just myself and the deputy mayor that were probably on council at the time. And I'm sure, Laura, you were here as well when we had an issue on the berm in St. Clair Beach where our own public works It was just like a buzz saw that went through the berm, and they were actually trimming, and even from the skirting of spruce trees, which you're not supposed to do. And they just, it was like a buzz saw that went through, and where neighbors were, I mean, they were calling, and some of them were in tears to see the trees being pretty much destroyed. One of them, actually, I can tell you, it was our police chair. He had a beautiful on his own property, probably 35, 40 foot blue spruce, and they just carved a big L out of it, and it destroyed the tree. And this is where the arborist came in. That's when we separated. We took tree trimming, and we took that out of the hands of Public Works, and we initiated, put it in public, and we put it in the Parks Department. And this is where Casey was hired. So we brought an expert in, and to make sure that we weren't doing harm to the trees. And if Fred Catta would have been alive at the time, he would have been flipping in his to see that. But that's the reason, back then. So to give you a little history in terms of why we brought that. We separated departments, and we basically put that under the parks. And Joe, you were here, at that time, and Laura, I think you were here as the clerk. So there was a lot of I'm sorry, and there was a lot of we had to plant some trees and replace some. But anyway, that's a little bit of the history, in terms of how important it is to have an expert. And if we don't have that expert, then we've got to get involved with that. And I think it's critical. Mr. Anthony, and then Councillor Altenhoff.
Just wanted to respond, Mayor, to Mr. Altenhoff too on the talk about the cost sharing. And yes, the policy is silent for a couple of reasons. One, as Mr. Barnett had explained, we do look. An individual property owner has the right to trim the tree on his property at his cost if he feels that he needs to do that, as long as he does not injure or put the tree in danger. So the other part is, and recall discussions, we had a lot of property owners that came forth and said, hey, we'll cost share to take this tree down. So we're circling back again to the back part of the policy where we want to put teeth into it, that trees aren't coming down because of nuisance. That cost sharing isn't really what we're looking for. We're looking for, yes, they can do some of the trimming, but if the tree is on town's property, and through a lot of policies and a lot of research, a lot of these trees originally were probably planted on private property and have now grown onto municipal property. Hence, through a lot of case law in the past, that tree becomes the property of the town. So that's where I think it's silent, Councillor Altenhoff, of not asking, given the opportunity to have a resident come up and say, I'll cost share to take down that poplar. It's for trimming, they can do it, but for the removal, the policy speaks to, what we're looking for. And again, it's for consistency across the board that we can provide our residents and council with a clear direction. So if you get asked or staff get asked, if it doesn't meet the guidelines of the policy, it's something that really should be addressed. So that's just how the policy was designed. I just want to confirm on the silent to the cost sharing.
Thank you. Councillor Altenhoff.
Thank you, Worship. And again, I appreciate the dialogue we're having. And I think this is important. I do note, I think it's section 6.23 to 6.25 where pruning is referenced, but I'll note that it's really, although it states the topic of pruning, it really doesn't get into the details of pruning on trees which encroach on private property. And I think, again, I think wording or something there to strengthen that would be appropriate. I recognize when we try to put things in place, we can try to make things, what's the correct word? I'll call them constrained. And I think that's the approach that's taken here. Certainly, I think in my discussions with our residents over the years, they're really for and promote trees. They appreciate what they do. They acknowledge climate change. And I just, my opinion is that with the policy as it's stated, it is very constraining. And I recognize there's advantages, but there's also disadvantages to that. And at the end of the day, you know, we're here for our residents. We represent our residents, and we also have to make, you know, the appropriate fiduciary as well as safety, as well as, you know, looking at all these things. And my fears are that this policy might be a bit too constraining, and there's very little opportunity for input from those residents, whether it be cost sharing or providing some you know, some work towards you know, alleviating these issues. I'm not saying remove trees because they're a nuisance. I've never said that, and I'm not stating that. But I still think, though, that we're missing out on an opportunity for resident administration engagement to ensure the best for our community. You know, it being a nice, healthy tree loving community, and I just feel that we've kind of fallen, you know, on our original intents on having some cost sharing or engagement between the residents and the administration. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Altenhoff. Any further concerning questions or comments from members of council? If not, then I'll ask that the report PWES 2023 maintenance removal policy be received, and that the policy 40-2002 be rescinded, and further that the tree maintenance and removal policy as appended to report PWES 2020-20 be adopted. What's council's pleasure? Councilor Antonio will move. Councilor Jobin support. Any no further comments at this stage here on the report? All in favor? Opposed, if any? Okay, the motion carries. All right, unfinished business. Is there any unfinished business? I don't see any requests there. Any new business? Okay. Then adjournment's in order. Councilor Altenhoff, Councilor Tonio. All in favor? Opposed, if any? That is carried. Thank you very much, members of council and administration. I think we're up in about 10 minutes or 7 minutes or so.
6:30, I think.
Oh, 6:30, okay.
Yeah.